What are you getting out of that article?
Well, you know, it's a continuation of what goes on of the roots of violence and how it's related to the thinking process, how the process of thinking comes about. And I think it's really something that anybody that's serious about this stuff has to get eventually to deal with, because right now I'm using thinking, and what's the consequence of that? And as you get into it, you find out that this is really one of the sources of a lot of our problems. It's in the thinking that has developed over the thousands of years of accumulated what he calls consciousness, that puts us in a position where we're at, where we can't talk to each other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's gotten to the point where we're using our thinking to try to solve a problem, but in retrospect, the 2, 3, 4, 5,000, 10,000 year problem still exists and hasn't been solved. So something really has to change, and probably the thing that at some point has to change is, you know, that world thinking, not just my thinking, but the world thinking and how it goes about thinking. And it's really powerful stuff. It really, you know what it does, guys? It gives me hope that, although there are so very few that will ever get to do this, but it gives me hope that there is a little corner someplace where there is a possibility of solving this thing. And it's very, very, very good. I mean, I can't say enough about the man. I say too much about the man, don't I?
Well, it's interesting because we're going to read from Krishnamurti tonight.
Oh, wonderful.
And
wow.
we're looking at his book On Fear.
Oh, great. I think I have that one. I think, excuse me for a minute. I want to go dig in my archives.
How are you, Bernie?
Good. I'm eating my dinner though, so I might put myself on off the video. So, but I am listening.
Good. How's Tommy?
Good.
Good.
Everything's good.
Good.
Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. What about you, Eileen?
I also am eating my dinner.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't feel so bad when I saw Eileen eating too. I said, it's dinner time. What are you going to do?
So, yeah.
I got it.
Good.
Good, Ugo.
That's the one, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's the one. Oh, hi, Rita.
Hi, Rita.
Yeah. So we'll just wait a few more minutes and then we'll start. Hi, Rita.
Hi.
How are you, Rita?
Good so far.
Good, good.
Next week is my big day.
Yes.
89.
I know, that's wonderful. You look so good.
It's inauguration day.
That's
Wow.
right. That's right.
My son-in-law's making margaritas.
Yeah.
and we might start drinking at noon.
Oh, okay. Hi, Bill.
How are you all?
Good, good, good. Good. So,
How are you?
Did you ever drill down on the concept of striving? Remember last
yeah, yes, I know last week we were looking at that.
Did you ever, like, you know, come to any conclusion afterwards?
only that what he was meaning was that striving is what goes on in everyday life. And to look at that and to have an awareness of that and to know that that's coming from the me. Because you can do almost anything that you have to do in life. And what is striving really? Do you need to strive, or do you just need to be and to do? I think that's a fundamental question.
Hi, Chip.
Supposedly, we're not the doer,
Supposedly, that's right. We're not the doer, but at this level of consciousness, at this level, we certainly do believe we are the doer. And that's an opportunity to look at that and examine that and explore that.
But if we're not the doer and we're identified with the absolute and have attained some level of identification with the absolute and but maybe not 100% because you can't do 100%, but so the actions that we take, even though we're whatever percentage we are identified with the absolute, that are we to say that actually in reality, no matter what our perception is, the absolute is the doer?
Fundamentally, yes.
Okay, so if the absolute is the doer and striving is being done, who's doing the striving?
Well, you would probably say consciousness. However, I think that before we can look at identifying with the absolute, I think it's important to see that what we do identify with is this me. And to see that moment by moment and be able to pull the plug on that.
So when you're actually, let's say, for instance, other than striving, let's say the person, the individual, is in the middle of having an argument.
Mm-hmm.
So the two ways the person can have an argument. One is they could be witnessing the argument and kind of saying, because they identified with the absolute for a long time. So they can witness the argument and actually be kind of witnessing it and saying, kind of looking at the individual arguing, which is themselves, but not being attached to it, not being identified with it, but arguing is happening. Then you have the ones that are not identified with the absolute, who are more identified with the me. They're overshadowed by the arguing and they're not witnessing the arguing. But those who are not overshadowed by the arguing and identify with the absolute actually have the experience, and maybe you have too, the experience of seeing oneself argue, witnessing oneself arguing.
It's a sure.
Correct. And also, if there is a witnessing of oneself arguing, there is no need to continue arguing.
Right.
You would pull the plug on that.
Well, not necessarily, because let's say, for instance, the infinite correlative process of the universe that knows past, present, and future of every sentient being, perhaps the person that you're arguing with, it's the destiny, the time for that person to hear that argument. And if you stop arguing, if you spontaneously start arguing, that's okay. But what happens if that arguing, in relationship to another person who's being argued with, that's exactly what should be happening?
Well, there's a point though. Anytime you become aware of something, that's your ego that's there. You're not aware. You're not with whatever you think. If you're conscious of something, what's conscious? It's the observer that's conscious. And once there's an observer, then you're not. To me, I have to realize that anything that I'm aware of, it's being awareness through my filter, through my ego.
No.
All goes through that. If I leave my ego, if I can let go of my ego, which once in a while I can, then by default I'm with the absolute, or I'm with the awareness. But the only time that I can be with that is when my ego when I am not. As long as I am, I have all the conditioning and all the consciousness that I interpret what's happening, seeing that event. So that event is not necessarily anything more than, a process of seeing what's going on through the filter of myself, of my ego. And that's not the difficult part for me is to realize or to try to establish where that is needed. In other words, in functional things, there's a whole bunch of things that I don't have a problem with 2 and 2 is 4 or any of that stuff. The problem is when I get nervous, when I get anxious, when I have feelings and so on and so forth, then that part of the ego is not, it doesn't work. It's the cause of my suffering. So I could be wrong on this, but I'm becoming increasingly aware of myself participating and what's going on. And whenever I am conscious of something, whenever I'm conscious of thinking, conscious of my thinking, it's going through the ego. It's going through that self. And that's the source of all my suffering anyhow, is this self that has been created by, we all know the story,
So when you're in motion, you have to, of course, have an ego to actually be on the planet. So it's not like you're going to get rid of your ego. So in order to be on the planet, you have to have some level of ego. You can be overshadowed, or you can have a lesha vidya. In Sanskrit means the last remains of ignorance, where you're predominantly established in unity. You're predominantly established in a peace that surpasses understanding, and you actually are witnessing. In other words, you see yourself in an argument, or you see yourself striving, but you're not overshadowed by it. You're actually witnessing it in a sort of a peaceful way.
But you're passing judgment on it. You're saying that now that striving is good, is okay.
No, I'm
that's
saying
the part but that's the part that I think is very subtle, and it's not.
But striving is okay. I'm saying that everything that is a consequence of the laws of nature, playing against each other, from time immemorial. So if a person is a victim, they will attract a victimizer. So it goes on and on. This is what it's all about. Now, the question is whether you are identified with the absolute and witnessing the action, because the action is going to happen because the correlative infinite intelligence of the universe is correlating past, present, and future of every human being that does something. It's all karmic related. So things have to happen. And the point is that when things have to happen anyway, because maybe from another incarnation, or maybe from something you did now, but some karma has to happen, it's going to have to happen while you're on the planet. So if you identify with the absolute and you witness you're arguing with somebody, or you witness you're striving, or you witness you're doing something, because when you witness it, you're not the
karma, then that's a cop-out to me. I mean, I don't understand karma, quite frankly. I mean, karma is an idea. It's not a fact. I'm sorry. Okay.
Could I say
No, it's okay. I just want to pull this together, and then because I do want to look at fear tonight. But look, it seems to me that we have to leave all concepts on a shelf. Let's take all concepts and put them on a shelf. And let's get into the actual experience of what our being is. Let's get into the actual experience without any concepts.
Well, after 40 years of meditating, I'm talking from experience.
Okay. So if we're in the present moment now, that's the only place life really is now.
Mm-hmm.
In this present moment now, what is the what is? What is the actual what is? There's a sense of being. right? A sense of being, a sense of I am, I exist. In that I am, I exist, if it's not attached, if it's not qualified by anything, I'm young, I'm old, I'm short, I'm tall, if it's not qualified by anything, then it's just I am. I am. And from that I am, without any qualifications, we realize that there's an awareness. Awareness. And that awareness, without any qualifications, without any judgments, without any conclusions, that awareness is aware of the now. It is the now.
And is there a quality to, you know, to the quality, is there a feeling level that you have in that moment that the I am, you experience I am, is there a quality to it like peace?
Yes, if you're going to give it a quality, then you could say, yes, the quality would be peace. It would be peace, it would be clarity.
Integrity, the whole three things you said the other week.
So there would be a sense of clarity, a sense of compassion for the what is.
Right?
And there would be a right action.
Exactly.
And so when there is that right action, then whatever we're meeting, whatever is arising, appearing, there's a right action in relation to that. Right?
Right.
Hey, Evelyn.
So, yeah,
Oh, sorry. I thought I didn't mean to interrupt you.
go
It's
ahead.
Chip. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chip.
Hi, Paul. You said hello before my mic wasn't hooked up.
It's okay. Hi, Chip.
So I just have a couple comments. Eileen, when you're saying you're on the planet and therefore there's an aspect of you that's egoic, or that you're egoic, and Ugo, when you said I am, if you're I am, then you're not, then it's egoic. I think Evelyn hit it right on the head. We essentially, we are exactly what Evelyn said. We are the I am. So when that I am, exactly what Evelyn said, I think you're right on target. When the I am is without qualification, that is the I am with the big I, you know, and the notion of an ego is just an illusion. So whenever we think we're separate and apart, that's an illusion. Whenever we think we're the ego, that's an illusion. Right. So anyway, that was my 2 cents. Sorry, Evelyn, I didn't mean to.
No, it's good. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. Thank you for clarifying it even further. I do want us to look at Krishnamurti tonight. And I want us to look at, I'm reading from a book called On Fear. On Fear. And I'm going to try and read as little as possible so that we can continue with our dialogue. This is Krishnamurti speaking. There is fear. Fear is never an actuality. It is either before or after the active present. When there is fear in the active present, is it fear? It is there, and there is no escape from it, no evasion of possibility. There, at that actual moment, there is total attention at the moment of danger, physical or psychological. Excuse me. When there is complete attention, there is no fear. But the actual fact of inattention breeds fear. Fear arises when there is an avoidance of the fact, a flight, then the very escape itself is fear. So this is very interesting, because in that moment, in the now moment, faced with a danger, physical, he's saying, or psychological, in that moment, there is complete attention. In that complete attention, there is no me. In that complete attention, because there is no me, there is no fear. That's what he's saying here. And I may have told you the story. I'm just going to quickly. When we were listening to Krishnamurti in Ojai, we would go, many years to listen to him in Ojai. We found ourselves on Meditation Mount, which is a beautiful meditation center in Ojai, high up in the valley, on a hill in the valley. And there were many, many people standing on the terrace overlooking the valley, and Paul and I were there. I suddenly felt something, and I looked down at my feet, at my shoes, and there was a rattler. In that moment of coming face to face with the rattler, there was absolutely no fear. A second later, somebody from nowhere came with a huge hook and got him and threw him over the railing of the meditation. And then I started to feel fear. Fear arose. Fear happened. So when Krishnamurti says this, there's, from my personal perspective, truth in that. And I'm wondering, have you ever experienced that? Does this even make sense for you?
Absolutely. I've experienced a number of times. And what I've learned from reading Krishnamurti is that the fear comes when the ego steps in and interprets the action. And so that's the villain. If I call it a villain, okay? It's not always a villain, Walter, but most of the times with me, it's a villain. And yeah, that's true of a lot of things, that they happen, even pleasure. You're in awe. I mean, I see things that are absolutely breathtaking, especially sometimes you get up in the morning and out here and you look over across the Peconic Bay. It's absolutely, there's no words for it. And then you start to translate it. It's the beautiful sun, it's the color, it's this, it's that, the wrinkling on the water, all kinds of hyperbole. But I've come to realize that the feelings come from the interpretation of the now by my ego. In the now, in the present, like you say, you're so concentrated on it, the ego isn't there. There's no thinking involved. But I don't know what the time fraction is, milliseconds or whatever. After the event, after the thing, then the thinking steps in and it interprets it. And in the case of a rattlesnake, it would tell you you're in extreme danger, and then the panic would step in. It's like, imagine when you have a pain or something and something is bothering you and you go to the doctor and, well, you got a little thing, and the doctor tells you it's a melanoma. Up to that moment, there's no panic involved. But the minute you hear the diagnosis, there's the woof, and it's interpreted as being bad. Now, it could be bad. I mean, it's bad, but it could be very bad, could be terminal, or it could be something that can easily be corrected. You have surgery or whatever you have to do. But it's what the mind does to it, what the thinking does to it, that then creates the feeling, and we live on feelings. Our whole life is bound by feelings. So this is why I say that, to me, it's so instrumental in getting some peace in my life when I get an understanding of how the mechanism works.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm a machine in a sense. How do I operate? Where's the operating book? I've been looking for one. Haven't been able to find one, but this guy, JK, is about as close as I've come.
Good, good. Okay. So he goes on. Fear and its many forms, guilt, anxiety, hope, despair, is there in every movement of relationship. It is there in every search for security. It is there in so-called love and worship. It is there in ambition and success. It is there in life and in death. It is there in physical things and in psychological factors. There is fear in so many forms and at all the levels of our consciousness. Defense, resistance, and denial spring from fear. Fear of the dark and fear of the light. Fear of going and fear of coming. Fear begins and ends with the desire to be secure, inward and outward security, with the desire to be certain, to have permanency. The continuity of permanence is sought in every direction, in virtue, in relationship,
Lisa?
in action, in experience, in knowledge, in outward and inward things. To find security and be secure is the everlasting cry. It is this insistent demand that breeds fear. He goes on. There must be food, clothes, and shelter. That is essential and necessary for all. Though it is sought after blindly and with reason, is there ever inward certainty, inward continuity, inward permanency? There is not. The flight from this reality is fear. The incapacity to face this reality breeds every form of hope and desire. I mean, just look at this. Look how he's unpacking this. But it's important when you hear the words to look inside, because he's talking about what's going on psychologically inside the workings of this me. Thought itself is the source of fear. Thought is time. Thought of tomorrow is pleasure or pain. If it's pleasurable, thought will pursue it, fearing its end. If it's painful, the very avoidance of it is fear. Time as thought and time as feeling bring fear. Well, this we know so well, right? Time, thought as time, thought as tomorrow, what will be, what if, that begins to produce fear. Time is thought and time as feeling, because with that thought comes a feeling, brings fear. It is the understanding of thought, the mechanism of memory and experience, that is the ending of fear. Thought is the whole process of consciousness, the open and the hidden. Thought is not merely the thing thought upon, but the origin of itself. Thought is not merely belief, dogma, idea, and reason, but the center from which these arise. This center is the origin of all fear. But is there the experiencing of fear? Or is there the awareness of the cause of fear from which thought is taking flight? Physical self-protection is sane, normal, and healthy. But every other form of self-protection inwardly is resistance. And it always gathers, builds up strength, which is fear. But this inward fear makes outward security a problem of class, prestige, power. Self-understanding is the awakening and the ending of fear. And when fear ceases, then the power to breed illusion, myth, and visions with their hope and despair also ceases. And then only begins a movement of going beyond consciousness, which is thought and feeling. It is the emptying of the innermost recesses and deep hidden wants and desires. Then, when there is this total emptiness, when there is absolutely and literally nothing, no influence, no value, no frontier, no word, then in that complete stillness, there is that which is unnameable. So he brings you to the what is. And he's asking you to look at the what is inside your own self. And to see how this me creates fear. And obviously, when there is fear, there's no emptiness, right?
Can you give an example of, I don't know if you've ever heard of the lady called the Pilgrim?
Yes, I have.
So she was in a, maybe it wasn't her, maybe she told the story of a grandmother in a house with her couple of kids, and in the neighborhood was some kind of serial killer going around. And suddenly this serial killer with a large knife was in her kitchen. And this grandmother, her disposition was quite identified with the absolute, and she saw the man with the knife. She did not have any fear. She actually looked at him and said, "Are you hungry?" Which is a quality of compassion.
Right.
So she had no fear. She was identified with beingness, and she expressed it in right action in terms of being compassionate. And so he ate. She fed him. And then he left.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lisa?
Oh, excuse me, Rita, Could you mute? Could you
Oh,
mute?
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add to what you just heard about what Krishnamurti was, what I just read?
I would
Yeah,
like,
Oh, go ahead.
Hi.
Sorry, Rita. Go ahead.
I would like to share a story that took place about 50 years ago that really seems to be coming into my head. I was looking at houses and I had my 5-year-old son with me, and I was in the kitchen and I looked out the window and he was behind the wheel of a car and the car was going down the driveway. And as I think about that, at that moment, there was no reaction. It was like, it was nothing. And then a few seconds later, it was like total panic. I ran out and I literally put my body in front of the car and stopped it. It was going very slowly. I was not that much of a hero. But it just reminds me of that moment when I saw the 5-year-old behind the wheel going down on the driveway very slowly. I felt nothing. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, that underscores what he was saying here. Right.
Chip?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I understand what he's saying here. I think your rattlesnake story was very interesting. And I think one of the problems I have with Krishnamurti is the way he talks about thought. And I can understand why Ugo basically has his takeaway on thought, which was, if I understood you correctly, what you said earlier, Ugo, was when you're thinking, it's the ego. And I think the problem with that is that's not always the case. Your experience with the rattlesnake was a perfect example. Your experience of the rattlesnake, when you're seeing that, when you're experiencing that process is happening through thought. In other words, there's a process at work and all of it's getting communicated through thought. It's at the time when you were not feeling afraid, it was not egoic thought. You weren't feeling separate and apart. But the demonization of thought is a real mistake. It's because again, thought is the mechanism of creation. It's the mechanism of the expression of the self with a capital S is thought. When we hear music, or we see poetry, or we see a beautiful sunset, or look at the heavens, these are all available to us because of thought. Thought is the organizing principle of life. So I think it's very important to distinguish between egoic thought and the thought of the self, which is like what you were talking about earlier, Evelyn, that limitless self, the non-differentiated self.
Yeah, I think most of the time when Krishnamurti is talking about thought, and I think when Ugo is talking about it, maybe another way to thinking about it is me thinking.
Mm.
It's when thought is used in the service of egoic interest, whether it's for self-protection or self-interest or self-expansion, when it's driven, when it creates and builds and illuminates a me, a center, that's a bad use of thought. But clearly, thought puts a man on the moon. Thought gives us vaccines. Thought enables us to communicate. Thought makes a world that's infinitely better for us to live in on a material, economic, and physical basis. But most human suffering is also the product of wrong thinking. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, clearly.
Can we differentiate then?
But I just want to say,
I'm sorry.
but of course, for most of us on an everyday level, I'm not doing rocket science, nor am I creating new economic theories, and I'm not spending most of my day in a laboratory developing drugs. Once I settle my mundane task of daily life, I spend most of my time thinking about me. So that's the problem. Most of human thought is probably, could easily go into the trash bin, and nobody would be less aware for it.
I
But we
agree with
don't.
you. I agree with you 100%, Paul. That's exactly it.
Right.
Right. So differentiating between psychological
Right.
thinking and practical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That, yes. And I think we said last week, is thought the pointer of the absolute, from the absolute, or is thought the pointer from this me? If it's a pointer of the absolute, I think that's what we're calling insight. I think that there's, we have to be able to, as Balthasar refers to it, the working mind. The working mind is, it has no, is literally ego-free. It's not centered around a self-centered me with my agenda and my needs, and right? I mean, even a scientist, if he's going to actually find a vaccine, is he doing the research from the me, I want to be first, so I get the first credit? Or is he or she there with full attention, with insight, wedded to the what is of that moment, so that there's clarity as to what is in that moment, and using thought to develop what it is in that moment, whether it's a vaccine or a piece of music or literature or baking a cake, to be able to differentiate that. And that's what you were saying, Chip. That's what you were pointing to. I'm going to continue because what I'm reading from here in this book of Krishnamurti is from his, actually, it's taken from his notebook. And I encourage you, if you can get a copy of his notebook, it's very telling because he's writing of his experience, although he doesn't like to call it experience, of the what is of that moment, including this oneness with the absolute. He goes on, it was a lovely evening. The sky was clear, and in spite of city light, the stars were brilliant. Though the tower was flooded with light from all sides, one could see the distant horizon, and down below, patches of light were on the river. Though there was the everlasting roar of traffic, it was a peaceful evening. Meditation crept up on one like a wave covering the sands. It was not a meditation that the brain could capture in its net of memory. It was something to which the total brain yielded without any resistance. It was a meditation that went far beyond any formula, method. Method and formula and repetition destroy meditation. In its movement, it took everything in, the stars, the noise, the quiet, and the stretch of water. But there was no meditator. The meditator, the observer, must cease for meditation to be. The breaking up of the meditator is also meditation. But when the meditator ceases, then there's an altogether different meditation. It was very early in the morning. Orion was coming up over the horizon. Orion was coming up over the, you need new glasses, over the horizon. The roar of the city had quieted, and at that hour, there were no lights in any of the windows, and there was a pleasant, cool breeze. In complete attention, there is no experiencing. In inattention, there is. It is this inattention that gathers experience, multiplying memory, building walls of resistance. It is this inattention that builds up the self-centered activities. Inattention is concentration, which is exclusion, a cutting off. Concentration knows distraction and the endless conflict of control and discipline. In the state of inattention, every response to any challenge is inadequate. This inadequacy is experience. Experience makes for insensitivity. It dulls the mechanism of thought, thickens the walls of memory and habit. Routine become the norm. Experience, inattention, is not liberating. Inattention is slow decay. In complete attention, there is no experiencing. There is no center which experiences, nor a periphery within which experience can take place. Attention is not concentration, which is narrowing, limiting. Total attention includes, it never excludes. Superficiality of attention is inattention. Total attention includes the superficial and the hidden, the past and its influence on the present, moving into the future. All thought is conditioned, and thought cannot uncondition itself. Now he means psychological thought. Thought is time and experience. It is essentially the result of non-attention. What brings about total attention? Not any method, nor any system. They bring about a result promised by them. But total attention is not a result any more than love is. It cannot be induced. It cannot be brought about by any action. Total attention is the negation of the results of inattention. I'm going to repeat that. Total attention is the negation of the results of inattention. What is false must be denied, not because you already know what is true. If you knew what is true, the false would not exist. The true is not the opposite of the false. Love is not the opposite of hate. Because you know hate, you do not know love. Denial of the false, denial of the things of non-attention is not the outcome of the desire to achieve total attention. Seeing the false as the false, and the true as the true, and the true in the false is not the result of comparison. To see the false as the false is attention. The false as the false cannot be seen when there is opinion, when there is judgment, when there is evaluation, attachment, and so on, which are the result of non-attention. Seeing the whole fabric of non-attention is total attention. An attentive mind is an empty mind. The purity of the otherness, this is where he's referring to the absolute. The purity of the otherness is its immense and impenetrable strength. And it was there with extraordinary stillness this morning. The attentive mind, he says, is an empty mind. Empty of what? Empty of opinion, of judgment, of comparison, of conclusions, of the past.
Yeah, it calls to mind, what Sailor Bob said. What's wrong with right now unless you start thinking about it?
So now we're back to the thought. Without thought.
Right.
Psychological
thought.
That's understood when I speak.
Right,
I
okay.
forget to say it, but that's understood. I don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
There is a baby in the bath water, so I don't want to throw it out,
Right.
But if when I wasn't using thought as a pointer to intelligence, creativity, and to solve my everyday problems of living, when I wasn't using thought to do that, if there were no other me thinking running through my mind, I would have large gaps of my day where I would sit or be fully immersed in the moment. I would not have the constant chatter going on in my head. And it's the constant chatter that leads to psychological suffering.
Well, but there is a point, though. You're always in the moment, whether you like it or not. That's where you live. That's where you are. The thing is, it's the I or the me or the center or however you want to call it that gets in the way because
Yes.
you're not into the moment. You're not addressing your attention to the moment. You're either thinking about what you're going to do 5 minutes from now, 10 days from now, 10 years from now, or you're dipping into the past for some kind of an experience or some kind of something or other.
Yeah.
So
Well,
very little of, like you say, very little of the day is spent being in the moment, being aware of the moment, being just, being in the moment.
Well, dare I bring up a word from our earlier conversation? There's no need to strive for self-realization. I'm already self-realized. I just have to get the me out of the way. You're already home. We have to negate everything that takes me away from home.
Well, how you get the me out of the way is that, let's say you're in that state of consciousness where you're empty, you're sitting there, you're meditating, thoughts come and go. So,
I'm not meditating.
Well, you're being.
When I'm sitting in a state of peace, I'm not consciously sitting there watching my breath and meditating.
No, well, that's not, I'm sorry, but I'm not using the word that we don't have the same definition. So when you're sitting there being in beingness,
Yes.
okay, and a thought comes, okay, either sometimes you go with that thought and you find yourself thinking that thought, and then the thought gets more complex. Like as Hugo says, you know, all of a sudden you want to go here or go there or solve your problem or whatever. Or you're sitting there in beingness and you're experiencing peace and you have a thought and you let it go. It could be a thought, it could even have a frequency of fear in it. But if you let it go and allow it to come and go and not pursue it, that is how you keep the identification with being.
Right,
Clearly.
right, right.
That's the negation of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing not to put energy into each arising thought.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, it's interesting with Krishnamurti, when you were starting this second reading, Evelyn, you were talking about, he was describing an experience that he had. And then you were saying, but Krishnamurti doesn't like to use the word experience.
Right.
So I think Krishnamurti, you know, he was struggling to try to come up with a vocabulary that, he was trying to integrate a vocabulary into something that wasn't really quite, you know, it didn't quite fully make it in a way, because the word experience can be in the now. It can, you know, in other words, right now we're having an experience. You know, that's how we use the word experience. It's something in the beingness. Krishnamurti objected to the word experience, I think, because he felt that there was an egoic filter over it.
That's right.
But the thing is, and like Eileen, like Paul, when Eileen was talking about earlier, she's saying meditating. Well, you're not meditating, you know, and then she's, you know, so she's using the word beingness, you know, to try to, again, fold into the Krishnamurti vernacular, but it's a little bit tricky. And also, I just want to say one other thing about thought. I also think, while thought is the mechanism of creation and our ability to share and experience what we're calling reality, there is also, I believe, fully a state of no thought.
Oh, yes.
But that state of no thought, in that state of no thought, there is no thing.
Right.
Right? So there is no thing can exist without thought. Or in other words, that's the only way that no thing is able to exist, right? No,
I'm not sure what you mean.
Once you have thought, the thought in and of itself is a thing.
Right.
Thought is an object. Thought is an object.
Right, correct.
But there is an experience, and thought is also a vibration, right? It's in the realm of, well, if you look at it like the encephalograms, is that the name of them?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're recording what they're calling brain waves and all this kind of stuff. Everything in what we're calling our world, our notion of creation is in a vibratory cycle, including thought, right? That's how come they're able to measure thought, right? Okay. When you go to a neurologist or something, they can say, look at these regions of the brain lighting up or whatever, right? There's a vibratory process that's underway. But there's also the experience of no thought, which is where we're aware, but there is, at that point, there's no thought, there's no thing.
Yeah, right. Non-conceptual being.
Yes,
awareness.
Exactly. Non-conceptually being, awareness, all those words. Right. So I just wanted to say that too. I think that's totally a state for us that we're able to access.
I just said something, if I may. You know, when you say no thought, when you say experience, I think what Krishnamurti is trying to separate, he's trying to say that you don't have an experience of no thought. There is no thought, which is no experience, and then there's the no experience. the experience comes in once the no thought stops, or you start thinking
But
about.
I think what I find is that you can observe your thoughts without getting sucked into them. You know, we see them, you know, we observe them, and then they come and they go. So we're not giving them energy, because to me that's awareness, being aware
Right.
of the thought, but we're not putting a meaning on it. You're just, oh, okay, had that, because you can't stop the mind. You can try, but I think what you have to do is really not give it that power. So as the thought is coming, you're observing it, and then it goes.
Yes.
That's what I think.
And what is left behind?
Another thought is going to come up, but then you're just going to also continue to make the awareness of the observation.
Awareness is left behind when you do not attach yourself to it.
Right, you're not
As
attaching.
it goes, you're sitting in this field. You know, you are aware
Of being.
of
But
being, awareness, witnessing.
Your senses record. Your senses record in memory what's happening moment to moment. Every moment that you're alive, your senses are aware and they're recording.
But coming back to the word experience, I think the point, Chip, you were trying to make, Chip, were you trying to make the point that you can have the experience, you can experience non-conceptual being?
No.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chip.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point that Krishnamurti was talking in a time where he didn't really have the vocabulary that he needed to address what he was talking about. And he used these words. So yes, so no, I don't want to use that word for experience. In my mind, when I talk about experience, I talk about it as beingness.
Yes.
But again, that doesn't work in Krishnamurti world.
Right. Krishnamurti seemed to attach to whenever you have an experience, you're out of the moment.
Right.
Because he was saying it was of the me.
Right.
Who was having the experience, right?
You've got to
Who was
know
having the experience?
with Krishnamurti, I mean, from my understanding, he didn't want to get into concepts. He wanted just for you to have a direct knowing. And he wanted you to understand what was going on inside you, but void of all concepts. And when you look at your own, I'm using the word experience, a direct experience, there is a thought, a space, and then another thought. It comes very quickly, but there is a space between two thoughts. That space between two thoughts is non-conceptual awareness, beingness, the background. And that is our fundamental nature.
That's the field. That's the field of consciousness. It's the field.
The field of consciousness. It is, that is always there. When you ask, when you want a definition of reality, the definition of reality in this non-dual teaching is that which never changes. That's the definition of reality. So we want to look inside and we ask ourselves, what is it inside, inward, that never changes? The body changes, clearly. Thoughts change, feelings change, beliefs change, senses change. There's a constant change. But what is it that never changes? Awareness. Awareness, the same awareness that is in this moment now, is the same awareness when you were 3, when you were 33, 63, 103.
Okay.
Awareness. non-conceptual awareness. And in that awareness appears the thoughts, the feelings, and all that changes. Against this changeless background, change happens. So when there is a wanting to, even the wanting, to know one's true nature, to know what is it, to have an answer to that question, what is it that has never changed? And what is it that knows the thoughts? What is it that knows the feelings? And so on. It's this pure, non-conceptual awareness, which fundamentally you are, I am.
But you experience, that's sort of conceptual. The fact is,
No, that's not, I'm sorry, that is not conceptual. That's a direct experience. The knowing your thoughts, knowing this, it's not an object, so you being awareness.
saying that in
That's
the being,
not a
if
concept.
you're achieving, and
If you what?
you're achieving beingness, if you're in the field of consciousness, if you're having, this word experience we're having a little trouble with, but in that experience of beingness that you see thoughts come and go, there's a peace, a peace that surpasses understanding. So you can tell without thought that this feeling of peace has to be there. Like what he was saying about the sunset and everything else, what happened to him was here he was in this sunset and this beauty and this and that, and all of a sudden it came upon him, like rather than sitting and meditating or thinking, it came upon him this expansive experience, which is peace.
So what's your point?
Yes. So I'm not clear, Eileen, what?
Well, I'm just saying that we can talk about it, but if you have this experience of peace, no matter what thoughts come and go, no matter if someone's in the hospital or something's happening here, and if you have this, if you're established, you're established at a certain amount. Sometimes you're established a little. You're not always in the Krishnamurti expression of no mind, no thinking, no nothing. I'm not even there. Most of the time, you're in and out, and you're in and out. But if you're basically, established in peace, established in that field where seeing thoughts come and go is a really good technique to remember who you really are. But it's accompanied by peace always.
Yes, of course. That's the empty mind he's talking about.
Also,
Yeah, if you say that has a quality, the thing is, if you're having peace, if you're actually, experiencing, if you're in beingness, peace is there. So what do you say? I'm beingness, or I'm peaceful, even though all this change is coming and going and people are suffering and this and that and that and that, but there's a peace that surpasses understanding. That if you want to use the word experience, for him, him going off into nothingness is like a wonderful experience. It's a wonderful thing, but we don't usually we can't keep that going always unless you go into samadhi. But generally speaking, we fall in and out of it. We're in being. We have thoughts. We get captured. We don't get captured. It's to be in the experience that he's talking about, like forever, is not even to be here.
He doesn't say that.
But I don't think he's not asking that of you at all. All he's saying, from my understanding of his teaching, is just to observe what is not peaceful.
Yeah, but in that experience, he said there's no observer, there's no nothing.
That's right. That's right. There's no me.
That
There's-
experience happens, but it's not, I don't believe it's sustainable in a human incarnation, because the word lesha vidya, the last remains of ignorance in Sanskrit, is that in order to live on the planet, on the earth, you have this thing called ego. You have the mind, which is the nature of the mind is to think. You can't eradicate thoughts. You can watch them come and go. So
yes, of
I
course.
actually read Krishnamurti. I can't get the book right now, but I actually remember him, which is amazing because I don't have a good memory. But he says that this beingness of no thought, of so on and so, it's momentary. It's maybe minuscule. Maybe it's a fraction of a second, and it happens very, very sparingly. And he says that this is all that you need. Once you get a taste of it, then something happens. And you're right, he can't describe what happened. He just says that it's beyond being able to be described. It's to be experienced. It's just like, we keep trying to talk about.
It's to be experienced without the experiencer.
Oh, yes.
Good save,
That's-
Evelyn.
That's what
Good
it
day.
So,
We have to leave it there for tonight.
Okay, we have to go, but but thank you all. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi,
Thank
Judy.
you.
Thank you. Hi,
Thank you.
Paul.
Buonanotte.
Okay.
Have a good, healthy, safe, peaceful week.
Yes,
Well,
you too.
Buonasera a tutti.
Buonasera, namaste.
Bravi.
Come on,
All
Mel.
right, how do we get out of here? Let's see. There we go.